Thank you for the questions. I think you learn many things when you
answer that in Malay.
For the sake, I think I answer in English first. Okay. I think you learn many things when you are overseas, when you are based overseas. But the first thing you learn when you are in Jakarta or in Indonesia for the matter is never be presumptuous. Malays are not the same as Indonesians. Indonesians, by their own definitions, comprises of more than 300 different ethnic groups and tribes. So the first thing that you learn is never be presumptuous and pigeonhole everybody that this is Malay, this is Javanese, or anything of that sort. Because we should respect and approach each group, each individual as unique, helping to understand them rather than to pigeonhole anyone into any particular category. So that's the first thing I would say that you learn. The second thing that you learn that I think will be useful is a language. Like I said just now, it's not exactly the same, but you have about 80% similarity that allows you to converse in a language where people can feel more intimate and perhaps more willing to share. Just as when I make my visits to the various household and where I see a Malay household, although I use Bahasa Indonesia, oblique Bahasa Melayu, I think it gives you a certain bond. Then they will be much more willing, much more open to sharing with you some of the issues, the challenges that they are facing down there. So the first thing is never be presumptuous just because I've been to Indonesia that everybody is Indonesian or the Malay stock. It's not like that. I think you know the history is much more complex and the language is very useful. Another point that I would like to add, which is not directly related to the Malay Muslim community, is that when you go from Singapore to such a big country like Indonesia, 200 over million people, they reproduce one Singapore per year. You get a sense of perspective of our role in the region, what we are able to do, what we are unable to do, why people see us and perceive us in a certain ways. You become much more sensitive to the circumstances that we are living in. And you quickly come to the conclusion how unnatural it is for us to be in the current position. And therefore, we should never take it for granted that we will always be in this happy situation down there.
Diversity actually is not dependent on form. So whether it is one party, whether it's two parties or multi-parties, I think diversity can be very much well and alive in all of these systems. Thank you.
I think two-party systems sounds very attractive to a lot of people. But we have seen how other countries have multiple parties, whether it's Japan, whether it's states where they have the budget crisis, whether it's UK now have three parties. So what people want is actually lively debate, to debate about policies before it's implemented. So if it's one party that can provide that diversity, it will be good as well. And on top of that, we have already have NCMP, have NMP. So whether it's one party or two party, I think the reality is that there's lively debate in the past few years in the Parliament, and it will continue to be so. Thank you.
Let me just put a small correction. To me, the issue is not one party, two parties, or multi-parties. We ask ourselves, let's work this through together. Like in the usual way, let's work this through together. What is it that we want? Is a multi-party democracy the ends or is it the means? We make a distinction to that. If it's the end, that means it's that form that we want. Then why do we want it does it mean that if you look around history, you look around the current situation, does it mean that those people with multi-party democracies necessarily produce better government? If that is the end. You have seen the challenges with the US system. You have seen the challenges with some of the European governments and maybe in some of the nearby democracies. So is that the end that we are looking for? If you say that that is not the end, and if it's the means, then what is the end? I would posit that the end that everybody would want is not whether one party, two party, or whatever. It's a strong, capable government that can navigate the waves to keep Singapore afloat. Then the question is, how do we get to this strong, capable government, sensitive to the winds of change and the waves, to make sure that we do not go into the dustbin of history? You look at ourselves now. What is there to stop people inside the parliament as members of parliament, NCMP, NMPs, or people outside the government from providing alternative perspective and alternative views to make sure that we bring the country forward? There's nothing. Even as a private citizen, if I disagree or I think I have a better idea to bring forth certain direction which this country, which I believe should take, there's nothing stopping me from raising it down there. Then the question is that, why has this not happened? Why has this not happened despite the fact that we have instituted mechanisms to get differing views from the NCMPs and the NMPs, so on and so forth? One aspect of the answer is not that difficult to understand, and is that as a small country, the choices that we have to navigate is not that much. It's not that much. We do not have fundamental difference in ideology or anything of that sort. The question is how best to bring the government forward. So I would say there is nothing stopping anyone from providing better ideas to bring the country forward. At the end of the day, the important things that we need to consider for this election and for every election is this. What is the quality of leadership we want in this country? I do not want diversity for diversity's sake. I have lived in the US, I have lived in the UK during my studies. I have seen so-called model, the paragon of multi-party democracy. I am not always sure that it works best. The question is that our circumstances are unique. Are we able and are we bold enough to strike out and develop a system uniquely our own? If you go back to history, say if 200-300 years ago, before the ascendance of this multi-party democracy, we have dynastic systems. Should we also blindly follow people just because people have dynastic systems? Because people's circumstances are different. We must be bold to strike out on our own and develop system unique to ourselves that will bring out the best in each and every individual, to have the strongest leadership team possible to bring the country forward. We are not a supertanker. We are a yacht. We need to watch the waves and catch the wind. And we need people who are sensitive to that. So distinguish that between the ends and the means. Distinguish that between the form and the substance. At the end of the day, the bottom line is the quality of candidates, the quality of leadership team that we have to bring the country forward. That is the issue. And I think today Straits Times has the most interesting article written. That is someone who has seen, he's not from the PAP, he's not from the government, he has seen. And you read his arguments, I think it's quite well written.